Welcome. My name is Lori Schmidt. I am the outgoing, soon to be retired curator. We are joined by with a special guest who I originally met in 1991 on a film project in Idaho. Bruce Weide, who is he and his wife Pat Tucker started Wild Century in 1991 with an ambassador wolf named Kwani, who did some miraculous things traveling with a wolf and doing educational programs. Abby Keller, wolf specialist here at the center, is also on. She is controlling the wolf exhibit camera so we can see if the wolves are kind of out. And then Giselle, our incoming curator, our soon to be the only curator, will be also assisting with questions as we go about our business here. So this webinar is called Wolf Myths and Folklore. And I invited Bruce not to torment him. I invited Bruce because again, with the work that we've done here at the International Wolf Center, the work that Pat and Bruce had done in Wild Century, prior to the Yellowstone reintroduction, as Bruce has said, we've kind of seen a lot. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of share some insights, some experiences. We wanted to keep this relatively informal. If you have questions, by all means, ask them during the presentation, especially if we have video up that we can kind of focus on some things. We did send in advance Wolf Reel or the Wolf Reeler Imagined, and it should have gone out to all the subscribers and everybody who registered for this event, so that you can kind of take a look at the work that has already been done, and certainly kind of really looks at the idea of what are some of the logistical reasons why people might be drawn to think one way or another about a wolf. And Bruce and I talked a lot about agrarian societies, the whole difference between a hunter-gatherer society that looks to the wolf and as something to emulate versus the agrarian society looking at something to eliminate. And so I think you're going to see that prevailing theme there. So that's me muttering up an introduction there. So Bruce, thank you for joining us. He's in Hamilton, Montana right now. And as you can see, how does Hamilton look in comparison to Ely? You have snow yet? Oh, one other thing I wanted to say that Bruce, he doesn't always just have this stern look in his face.
Well, what happened there, Laurie, is and this is going to happen. I mean, our internet connection is not good. I mean, here we are living in Montana, the United States, and its internet connectivity is worse than a third world country. But our outside looks a lot like.
Okay. Well, we kind of knew that, and we knew Bruce was going to freeze up for a little bit, and we said that we still think it's a real valuable opportunity here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Bruce and Abby to kind of go through some of the special kind of experiences that Bruce would like to share, and then later on we have a little bit of our own what's in our neck of the woods, where Abby has put together a compilation of our game camera. You heard about our skunk getting in the wolf pen. We have a lot more other things lurking around the woods at night. So I'm going to mute and stop my video, and I'll see you on the flip side.
You just learned that I'm Bruce Weide. I was part of Wild Century, and we did an education program in the West, in the Northeast. We were in the Northeast a few times. We never went into the Minnesota area because the International Wolf Center was there, and they were already doing great work, and so there was no reason to repeat that. So and my part of that program was to talk about the wolf story form. So I'm just going to get started here. Wolves, I mean, not wolves, myths or stories are the instinctive nest that humans build to protect their young. And so this came from Joseph Campbell, the late mythologist. And what he's talking about there is that, we are a storytelling animal. We can't help but tell stories. That's in our DNA. And long ago, before there was any kind of recorded history, we passed information from one generation to the next in a story form. And so as a storytelling animal, we shape myths, folklore, fairy tales that not only entertained but inform members of our society how to conduct themselves within that society, how to survive. Now, over the past, I would say about 15 years, this notion of being storytelling animals, it's kind of come into vogue. And you hear that quote like I just gave from Campbell, and it seems kind of positive, but there is a dark underbelly to being a storytelling animal. And in order to illustrate that, I have a personal example. And it, well, it was the catalyst for what moved me to get involved with the wolf issue some 40 years ago. So, first of all, we got to just rewind in time because it took place when I was 15 years old. I was living in Alaska at the time and about to make a very big decision for a 15-year-old. Now, rewind a little bit farther. As a boy, I grew up with wolf stories, as did most everybody at that time, in which, the wolf was a villain. I mean, he was the bad guy. He was the big bad wolf. But our family had a story. If we could go to intro one there, Abby, had a story about my grandpa, and he had been detained after school, probably did something naughty, so he was kept after school. And as he walked home from school, and I'll have you know that in those days, the days of my grandparents and my parents, school was always miles away and it was uphill both ways. So he's making his way home and he sees a wolf following him. He increases his speed and the wolf increases its speed. And pretty soon he's running. And the way the story was told, boy, he made it in through that front door just by the skin of his teeth. And that story always ended with, if your grandfather had been eaten by wolves, you wouldn't be here today. So I knew from that story that a big bad wolf existed, and it was way more threatening than the one in the Three Little Pigs. So now, and I'm out with my buddy Derek, and in our fevered adolescent minds, we were going to make our bloody fortune killing wolves because there was a $50 bounty on wolves back then. So we're out on a hunting trip in the outback of Alaska. And as we were going through the woods, I saw up on a rise, probably, about 100 yards away, and up above us a little bit, a wolf looking down on us. And I nudged my friend, pointed up there, and he goes, "It's yours." And so I raised my rifle and sighted in. And there's another influence that then had somehow, I mean, it kind of faithfully came to me just days before that hunting trip. I had seen a documentary called Death of a Legend, and it portrayed a wolf that was much different than the one I had heard about in stories. It was a more realistic portrayal. And in that documentary, there is a footage that has stayed, etched in my mind to this day. So as I'm sighting in through the rifle scope, I've got the stories of the bad wolf and then this new portrayal that I had just seen. And I bring the crosshairs up onto the wolf's chest. And as I'm doing that, I'm looking into the wolf's eyes. And I know it was looking down at me. And I had this feeling as that wolf looked at me that it could see right through me. And I released the safety and started squeezing the trigger. And then I just couldn't go through with it. I lowered the rifle. And my friend Derek was just apoplectic. It's like, what are you doing? And he went to raise his rifle, and I put my hand out and pushed the barrel of his rifle down and said, he's mine. Now, I don't want you to think that I had any kind of a feeling of righteousness from that action. I didn't feel merciful. I didn't feel good at all. I felt like a coward. I felt very unmanly. And it would be, well, and the only thing that I did know for sure is I did not want to be like those men in the firing squad. And that story, I was so embarrassed by it, so chagrined that I did not tell that story to anybody for a good 20 years. So now we'll move into wolf stories. And I kind of divide wolf stories into three categories. We could have hunter one, Abby. There are the stories that come from hunter gatherers. They date back to before recorded time. Now, early agriculture one. And then there's stories that come from agriculture, the herders and farmer stories that date back some 12,000 years for agriculture, 10,000 years for herders. And then we move into a more contemporary view of the wolf. Intro 3, please, in which the animal still is viewed, as a beast of death and desolation. But there's been the advent of a new portrayal of the wolf in which it's, well, a little more positive, let's just say. And I think that kind of coincides, and see if you guys agree with me on this, but I think that kind of coincides with the public 1963 of Never Cry Wolf. I don't think Never Cry Wolf was the catalyst for a more positive portrayal of the wolf, but I had something to do with it. Nevertheless, if we go to Fairy Tales 1A, positive portrayals of the wolf could be rather fanciful. And I think that the wolf kind of serves as a litmus test to the human imagination. I mean, it is based more on a fanciful image than the animal that actually walks the woods. So anyway, as Lori pointed out earlier, let's go to Hunter 2. The stories that came from hunter gatherers, had a more positive view of the wolf, and a lot of this arose from them wanting to emulate characteristics that they saw in the wolves that they admired, much as they did, themselves. And these traits could be, strength and hardship. So while this one's up right now, I'm just going to point out this is an Inuit carving, and it has a dualistic nature. You see up there in the left hand, side, that looks like a wolf, greeting this guy who's a shaman. And if you look at the bottom, when you turn that sculpture over, it looks like the wolf is attacking him. So, they did have this kind of a little more realistic view of the wolf, but I just found that really fascinating.
Sure.
But anyway, I want to tell you this crow story. This is Crow Indians, and it was a wolf and a dog. And I think it's pretty easy to see here that this is, pretty metaphorical for their view of themselves, versus, say, farmers. And this crow woman had been out digging roots with her dog. And as they headed back to camp, the dog looks over his shoulder and he sees a wolf there. And he goes, "Hey, get out of here. You only come around because you want what I have." And the wolf says, huh, yeah, what could I want of yours? You get beat all the time. I've even seen children kick you aside. And the dog, he goes, yeah, well, at least I can steal meat whenever I want. You sit with your armpits stinking, pulling dirt balls out of your tail, just waiting for people to butcher buffalo so you can go scavenge what they leave behind. And the wolf says, yeah, well, look who's talking. With camp garbage smeared all over your face. When do they let you have a good time? And the dog says, yeah, well, I sleep warm, and you sleep out in the rain, and they scratch behind my ears. And right then, the crow woman just smacked that dog in the head, and she says, hey, quit your yapping. Come on, we got to get back to camp. And the dog followed along, but he shouted over his shoulder, you're just full of envy. Wolf, he just kept walking away. He didn't even bother to reply. He wanted no part of that life. So again, like I said, I think that apparently a metaphor for how they viewed themselves in comparison to farmers or agriculturalists. But anyway, a lot of things changed for humans as we shifted to agriculture. Um, and a lot of the, I mean, some of the two of those big things that the views changed on were ownership, what we viewed as being mine. So let's just go to Hunter 3A. Now I recall this. This isn't the exact exhibit I saw at the. It was either the American Museum of Natural History or the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, but it was kind of similar. And it was a glass display case, and in it held all the possessions of this Inuit hunter. And so there was a kayak, paddle, spear points, knife, pants, shirt, and then this anorak right here, which was made, I think, from walrus gut. And so you had these like about 3-4 inch strips horizontally, just sewn very intricately and minutely, so that anorak was completely waterproof. Um, Point though being, this guy did not own a lot of stuff, and as we became agriculturalists, we accumulated more and more stuff. And this sense of ownership, two areas that I see, huge differences in. One would be land, and the other with animals. So if we could go to early agriculture 2, um, agriculturalists owned animals, and they labeled them as either good, like the sheep over here on the right, or bad, as these wolves that are depredating on that sheep, based on whether they were domesticatable or if they were a threat to the animals that we owned. And hunting cultures, on the other hand, did not own the animals they hunted. They viewed them as a people, and they would prayer to that animal, asking it to give up its life so that this hunter could feed his group. And in return, it had died, back, to the living. And also, too, was the view of land. I mean, farmers owned land. Of course, they stayed rooted to that, whereas hunting cultures, they had basically territories that were held collectively. And those borders, too, would be often a little bit fluid. They weren't rigid like you'd find a border between farms. Now, another story that I wanted to pass on to you is this of the Koyukon of South Central Alaska. And this is going to illustrate two cultures having a different view of the same thing. But the Koyukon people, there was a time in the distant time when they lived with the wolf people. And then the time came that they parted ways. And the wolf people promised the Koyukon that they would make kills and drive game their way. And the Koyukon promised to reciprocate. And so to this day, if a Koyukon hunter comes upon a wolf kill that's clean and unspoiled, they view that as a gift. And just think of the difference between that perception and kind of, your typical hunter in this country who had come across a deer that had been killed by wolves and just left there. Their perception would be of waste, wanton slaughter of wolves killing just for the fun of it. Whereas the Koyukon saw that as a gift. Two different views. So here's a contemporary American Indian, American Native American. You could do 6. Same thing in a drawing, and 7. I love this picture. So the stories that came from agriculture, like I said, really concentrated on control and planning. So think of the 3 little pigs. Yeah, so we all know, I mean, this story, 3 little pigs. And the reason that 3rd little pig wins in the end is because he plans ahead. He's going to be in control of the things around him. He builds a house with the most advanced materials, and wildness, or the wolf, can't make his way in. So let's just review. Here's some images that are going to come up here. Let's start with early agriculture 3. Here's some images that just come, from early agriculture. This is a Greek image from this is 15th century, but this perception dates back to before that. 5. Go to 5. This is Romulus and Remus, and they are being protected by this female wolf. And in fact, she even went to go to 6. She went on to, I mean, she not only protected them, but she, nourished them, nursed them. Now, this is what I find so interesting about the Romans, is that they kind of had a schizophrenic view of the wolf. On one hand, they were agriculturalists and they knew wolves were bad guys. But on the other hand, a wolf had saved the founder of their nation. And it kind of makes sense, because to the Romans, it was their fatum, or their fate, that they would conquer the world. And so if you're going to set out on a big task like conquering the world, well, it behooves you to have a bit of wolf in you, because you're going to have to be pretty aggressive. So go to the next image. This next one is a bas relief, that comes later. This is from Christianity. And at the foot of Christ down there, who's being crucified, is the Romulus and Remus wolf. And as you can see, right there. Now, that Romulus and Remus wolf, what's going on there? This is a metaphor for Rome. That symbolizes Rome. And it's at the foot of Christ, below Christ, in the underworld, and therefore synonymous with Satan. Now, this kind of image, I've seen a lot of this image, and over time it evolved, and Romulus and Remus drop out of the picture. And all that's left there is the wolf at the foot of Christ. And people have then forgotten that this was supposed to be symbolic of Rome, and it's just a wolf that's down there. And the wolf becomes a direct metaphor for Satan. Pretty bad association. And then one more, go to the next one. here's one, more contemporary, but this is from propaganda in World War II. And so we have the Romulus and Remus wolf slashing up the Union Jack of Britain. So that's not really the wolf and Romulus and Remus doing that. They are symbolic of Italy, and they are a threat. They're going to destroy England if England doesn't do something about it. Okay, and now go ahead and go to early agriculture 8. Um, we see with the advent of the kind of the Middle Ages, a really bad depiction of the wolf starts coming in, and I mean, we go at it in a crazy manner. This is a Goya um, drawing, and that priest is entering into a deal with that wolf, who again is a metaphor for Satan. Go to 10. Here's a priest protecting his flock from these two demons and a wolf. Again, a wolf being equated, with demons and evil. 10. And what people did to wolves then, I mean, they didn't just dispatch them, just kill them. I mean, like here, I mean, we see here that this wolf is being hung. And in both those depictions, the wolf has been dressed up in clothes and then hung. 11. This is a Paul Rubens painting, the Wolf Hunt. So this is, what you do to get rid of the bad guys. 12. Because you get rid of them because this is what the bad guys are doing to us, or so we thought. 13. Oh, the Russian troikas. Yeah. Willa Cather in her book, My Antonia, it has a wonderful scene that she fabricated about a Russian wedding party being pulled away from the ceremony in a sled, and wolves come. And go to the next one. Oh, this happens to be a wedding party who didn't even make it to the sled. They're getting wiped out by wolves just hanging around at the party. Go to the next one. Anyway, so yeah, these wolves there are gaining on this Russian sled that was pulling this new groom and bride, and Peter, I think was his name, shoves the bride out to lighten the load on the sled, and the groom is just like, yeah, I mean, shocked and protesting, and Peter shoves him out and lightens the load even more, and they make their escape. But anyway, go to the next one. Ooh, I hope I don't go too far. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was obviously something that captured the imagination of people, especially Russians, these woods of the wolves trying to bring down people. Um, okay, now let's jump to, yeah, I mean, forward in terms of these illegal aliens who crossed the ocean and started coming into the North American continent. And these settlers brought with them, their religion, their values, and their stories of wolves, their perception of wolves. It was John Adams, who is our second president. Do agriculture 4, please. He wrote that when the settlers first arrived, the whole continent was one continued dismal wilderness, the haunt of wolves and bears and more savage men. Now the forests are removed, the land covered with corn. Do ag 8. The land covered with corn, orchards bending with fruit, and the magnificent habitations of rational and civilized people. So this is one of the things those civilized people did. Those are bison skulls right there that have been piled up. Now, speaking of savage men, let's go to early agriculture 17. There are werewolves. And this is yours truly, back for some Halloween party years ago. Um, yeah, werewolves. They come to us. The very first werewolf story that we know of comes to us in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh is a king. He's the hero of the story. And Ishtar, she's a goddess, and she's coming on to Gilgamesh. And he's not very comfortable with this. And he spurs her advances, and he does it because what she'd done to a previous lover. And this previous lover was a poor young shepherd who was enamored with her. And he'd bring her offerings, and she thought that was kind of nice and delightful. And she sort of humored him along until one day she grew tired of him and she transformed him into a wolf. And the guy's dogs tore him limb from limb. So that's our first known man to wolf transformation story. A little more in keeping with a werewolf is the story of King Lycon. Let's do early agriculture 18. Uh, King Lycon was hosting a guest, and he was suspicious that this guest was a god. So he thought it'd be pretty clever to trick this god, and he kills his son, chops his son up, had him cooked up and brought to this feast to this traveler that was being hosted by Lycon. Well, that traveler was Zeus, and the gods don't eat human flesh, and he was disgusted by what Lycon had offered him, and he pushes the platter aside and he transforms Lycon into a wolf. That was probably the real beginning of our werewolf stories. Let's go to the next one. And there have been all kinds of depictions of werewolves. This picture here, I think it's a 15th century etching, but it's not of a wolf. That is actually a werewolf chewing this woman in half. And the popularity of werewolves continue on into the present day. Let's go to the next one. This is Universal Pictures 1941 movie, The Wolf Man. And boy, did this guy have an influence on me. He scared the living daylights out of me. And poor Larry Talbot there, played by Lon Chaney. He's just this unfortunate victim who gets bit by another werewolf, and that turns him into one, and he cannot bridle or control the inner savagery that takes over when he becomes a wolf. Oh, anyway, the werewolf stories, yeah, they go on. I mean, I'm sure you've been familiar with some of these. I mean, there's like Twilight, that series Twilight. The other series that I was asking Lori about earlier, that neither of us could come up with the title of it. There have been at least 3 movies, and I think it was like a Lycon family, and they're in conflict with vampires, and so that's a little more sympathetic view of the werewolf. The most recent one that I read was from Anne Rice. She wrote a book entitled The Gift, and those werewolves are fully conscious of being able to turn into a wolf. They can do it on command, and while they can still kick butt and be wild and savage as any werewolves have in the past, they're discriminating. They're kind of like Dexter. They only take out the bad guys, and this ability to turn into a wolf is viewed as a gift. And like I said, that was the title of that book. Okay, so now go back to that agricultural age from whence werewolves came. Let's do agriculture 3. So these stories, cautioned us that wildness equated the uncontrolled forces of evil. And the only way, let's try 5 now. This is wildness trying to make its way into the window. Mom's valiantly keeping the wolves at bay. 6. And those wolves chasing us. 7. And this is what you do to them. You dispatch them. You get rid of them. You control wildness. Um, Now on to 8. Now we saw that one already. Okay, 9. Again, we struck out with a vengeance at wolves. 10. We did it with trap. 11. 12. Poison was employed. 13. So yeah, the wolf just is the ultimate symbol of wildness, and wildness in our culture, has kind of historically been something that you keep at bay, that you control. How about 14? Oh, these are just wonderful. This is kind of from around the period of World War II. I mean, I don't know. This doesn't even need any explanation at all. I mean, wildfire is like the wolf, and you don't want that thing loose in your national forest. This next one, go to the next one. I love it even better. Strike down this monster. Um, and there, couched in those flames, you see the wolf. Okay, go on to the next one. Now, wildness, yeah. It's kind of, I think, not too hard to figure out which side of wildness this gal is running on. She certainly did not take the lesson, learned from Little Red Riding Hood. Let's do Little Red Riding Hood 1. Now, I'm going to give you guys a special treat here. Never before has this been seen. And this is some of these pictures are the first and only photo journalistic depiction or capture of Red Riding Hood's story. And you may recall that Mom had made that cape with that hood and sent Little Red Riding off with a basket full of wine and bread, provisions for Grandma, who lived on the other side of the dark woods, and Grandma was not feeling well. Go to the next one. So off goes Little Red Riding Hood. And as she makes her way through the dark woods, go to the next one. She strays from the path, and she's going to pick some flowers. Go to the next one. And there she encounters the wolf. And the wolf asks her, "Oh, what's a sweet little thing like you doing in the dark woods like this?" And she tells him, go to the next one, that she's just gathering some flowers, a bouquet for her grandma, and she's setting off to take these provisions to her. Go to the next one. And the wolf asks, I love this drawing. um, anyway, he finds out where grandma lives. Do the next one. Okay, and the next one. And Little Red Riding, and then the wolf takes off through the woods and beats Little Red Riding Hood to grandma's house. Go to the next one. And the wolf goes into the door and dispatches with grandma and gets into her clothing. And Little Red Riding Hood gets to the house, knocks on the door, and the wolf calls her in. Come in. Go ahead to the next one. Oh, please just sit on the bed here and talk to me a bit. And so she did that. And then the wolf said, Oh, I'm just feeling a chill. I think you should get into the bed with me. And so go to the next one. So Little Red Riding Hood does that. And that's when she starts to notice that this doesn't look a lot like Grandma. Go to the next one. And as she says, What big eyes you have. Oh, the better to see with, my dear. Whoa, what big ears you have, Grandma. Oh, the better to hear you with, my love. Well, those are awfully big teeth you got. And go to the next. And the wolf rose up and gobbled her up. And that was the end of Little Red Riding Hood. And that's how the story ends, at least the one recorded by Charles Perrault in French fairy tales. It would have different, happier endings later on. But something that's really interesting to note is in a version that's hardly ever heard. Um, when Little Red Riding Hood gets into the house there, into the cottage with the wolf, who's disguised as grandma, the wolf says to why don't you remove your clothes and just throw them in the fire and then get into the bed with me? And so, yeah, Little Red Riding Hood thinks, oh, that's a little bit strange request from grandma, but okay, I'll do that. And she does it. And about that time that she starts kind of thinking she might have done the wrong thing. So she says, I might have to go to the bathroom. And the wolf says, okay, well, go outside. I'm going to tie this little string around your ankle. And that way I'll know that you're safe out there. And just keep shaking this string every so often just to let me know you're there. Well, Little Red Riding Hood ties that string to a branch that's kind of moving back and forth in the wind, and she makes good her escape. And pretty soon the wolf wises up and he's in hot pursuit. And the riding comes to this stream where these laundresses, these women are washing laundry, and they happen to have a sheet pulled on each side by these women, and it forms a bridge, and the Little Red Riding Hood is able to run across that. And when the wolf comes, he's crossing the bridge, and the laundresses let go of the sheet, and it gets all the wolf gets tangled in it and it drowns. Um, anyway, what I find fascinating about that version is, that it's not some stranger hunter who comes along and saves the day. It's Red Riding Hood and these women who
Mhm.
made her escape. But in any version that we hear, we know that this is a story that's warning young people, young women in particular, to beware of strangers. It's not a story, go to the next one, cautioning people to avoid wolves that cross dress. Um, and so I want you to just think for a moment. Okay, so this is a story that we've all been familiar with and grew up with, and like so
Mhm.
many of the other wolves stories where the wolf is a villain. Think what a difference it would make if the stories we told about Bambi look like this.
Mhm.
Go to the next one. I think we'd have an entirely different way of viewing deer than
Mhm.
than we do.
Yeah.
Here are a few. Here are a few more images that just are inspired, more modern day inspirations of the wolf. I mean, of the Red Riding Hood story. Go to the next one. One thing I think you'll note in all three of them is kind of the overt sexuality that's there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Go to the next one, and then the next one. This last one is kind of cute, I think. So, yeah, there's a story of Red Riding Hood.
So
Um,
we're getting pretty close to like a 5 minute kind of we want to have some time for questions. Did you want to
okay.
skip did you want to skip to some of the kind of contemporary public
Yeah,
opinions to
let's
that?
go to ads.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll just take, I mean, I think these images speak for themselves, okay? So
Yep.
just do one. I mean, a Winchester ad, you're meat if you don't have Winchester ammunition. The
Yep.
next one, I don't know what make of rifle or bullet it's advertising, but I think the
Yep.
message is pretty much the same. The next, this gallant guy in the sled is defending his cream of wheat. Next one. Here we are. You know, where would we be without travel agents? Well, try to find a travel agent nowadays.
Exactly.
Okay, the next one. I mean, this is how far flung, you know, the image of the wolf can be used. The next one. You know, home security will protect you from this guy. Next. There's wolves, you know, equated with debt. You don't want debt at the door. Next. This is a billboard right in my very own Ravalli County. And the demon in this case was zoning. Okay, the next. Now, I'm not going to say this so much portray a positive portrayal of the wolf, but it's not demonizing the wolf.
Right.
It's just saying that if you eat this beef jerky, you know, you be wild and smoking. Next. And this was, you know, an ad for Bite magazine, just saying that, you know, it'll help you be an aggressive techno guy. And I don't think you can find Bite magazine anymore. You know, follow your instincts, drink beer, drink enough of it, and you'll go wild. Next. Okay, it's chewing tobacco. That has a lot to do with wolves, but it'll make you an individual who's part of a pack too. Next. And I love this one. There's a word for business people who don't use SkyTel. Lunch.
Oh,
I
geez.
try to find SkyTel now. I think they got taken out by the wolf. And then finally, this one that dates back a little bit earlier. I think this was 1939. Yeah, 1939, a Barbarol ad. I think this is really just creepy. Kind of Red Riding Hood here talking to her grandpa, and she's in her underwear. Anyway, I'll conclude with just quoting Barry Lopez. And in the epilogue of his classic book of Wolves and Men, he wrote, I do not think it is possible to define completely the sort of animals that men require in order to live. They are always changing and are different for different people. And that's it.
That's great, Bruce. Yeah, there's just so many things wrong with so many things. Yeah, I appreciate your perspective, and my gosh, you put a lot of work into this. I'm so sorry to make your overtime project on this. So I'm grateful for seeing things that I've you know, in all the years that I've been doing this, that the Little Red Riding Hood, that whole fear manipulation to control. I mean, that is literally what, you know, what that story is about. You know, I mean, just the whole idea, don't stray from this path or you will go bad. So appreciate all of those perspectives. So we do have some questions. Wondering if you'd want to take some time to field some questions. Maybe Giselle can read those off if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, let's see if I can answer them.
Thank you again, Bruce. That was really great. I think these are more like comments about the movie Never Cry Wolf is a very good film about how wolves live, their survival, and their relationship to humans. And the film certainly influenced my interest in studying wolves. That was a comment from June B. Keith just commented that a story I found about the last wolf killed in the UK had it that an old lady was washing dishes at a river when a wolf leered up over her and she bumped it on the head with a big pan, and that was that. So certainly a lot of different stories. I do have one question about why do you think it is that it's just, you know, you showed us all of these different perspectives and attitudes towards the wolves, and why do you think it is that, just the wolf gets all of that in such an intense and polarizing way, when you have other carnivores, other predators like bears and cougars. Do you have any thoughts on maybe why the wolf gets all of that?
That's a really good question, Giselle. This is my speculation. I have no idea if this is like true or not, but I think it's sort of that kind of that classic, conflict that often culminates, between the student and the teacher. I mean, hunters, they literally watched wolves and learned how hunting techniques from them. I mean, wolves were teachers. But then the time came when, the humans started being able to outdo the wolves. I mean, think of this one. Think of this as a similarity. Darth Vader being the pupil of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then the conflict that ensues when the student feels that he surpassed the teacher. And I just think that kind of relationship was there. And so, and because these similarities seen between them, I think that the wolf would appear more threatening than a bear or a mountain lion. And that's why they kind of got, I don't think I would call it special treatment, but yeah, I mean, they got singled out as really bad guys. Hey, you know what? I forgot to ask for this one movie clip, and I want you guys to see this so bad. Can you do that movie clip of wolf protesters? I mean, this is just.
And the wolf you propose to foist upon us will be just another savage saying. The wolf and savage have a lot in common. I understand they're both very family-oriented, and they teach their young how to kill and torture, and they enjoy watching suffering of either other folks or other species.
I'd like to also refer you to the Bible in Revelation chapter 6, verse 7 and 8. It plainly states that the rider on the pale horse gave power over the devil and the other people to influence this world. It stated that they had power to kill by the sword, by hunger, which is what the wolf will cause, by other things, and also by the wild animals. I wonder if it wasn't referring to this plan to reintroduce wolves in this country.
I also would like to use some biblical quotes. We're in something greater than just wolves. This is a spiritual warfare. And Satan would like to have us weak. He would like to interfere with the raising of livestock and sheep, because the Bible states we're supposed to eat beef and lamb.
Yeah, I just wanted you guys to see that first woman that you heard talking. She at that time was actually in charge of the agriculture in schools program for Montana. So she was in charge of it. Yeah. And then that last woman, I mean, I think the words that I want you to go away with what she says is, she says, this is spiritual warfare. Okay, well, go ahead and anyway, I just wanted you guys to see that. I forgot to bring that up when I was going through the.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Any other questions or comments?
I do not. We might have some more popping up, but yeah.
Did I miss the Sami reindeer?
I didn't say anything about them.
Okay. Giselle, did you see that one from Tony? So how would you respond to the Sami as they herd reindeer and keep wolves out of their areas? So again, they're protecting their reindeer herds, and so from the perspective of it's almost like one wildlife over another wildlife, I'm assuming, other than Sami reindeer herds are domesticated, so it's basically essentially a livestock scenario.
Yeah, so, but I'm not really sure what the question is.
I don't either. Yeah. Yep.
Um, I'm not, first of all, I'll just say, I mean, I'm not that familiar with the Sami people. I
Yeah.
know that they have this relationship with the deer,
Right.
and I would think that they would protect them as best they could from wolves.
Right.
Again, you know, they're herders, and
Right.
I would imagine that they view themselves owning those reindeer. I mean,
Right.
that they're like possessions.
No, I think you're back to that same statement of agriculturalists viewing it possessing versus coexisting, you know, the
Right.
ownership factors. All right. Great. Well, we're kind of running out of time. The wolves are had a couple of what we call frozen pucks, so just some frozen meat. They were less than thrilled about my offerings. So the we are going to be going to daylight savings time this Sunday. So if you're watching the web cameras, remember that we will be dark by 5 o'clock at night here, and as we get into closer to the solstice, it'll be 4:30. You know, those of us who come to work in the dark and go home in the dark, that kind of season has started. So any other questions that you have to for us as far as the facility of always you know, welcome anything that you have. You can send any comments to cure@wolf.org. I want to thank Bruce again. I think you know, and just from that standpoint, you know, again, Bruce and I and Pat met in 1991 when we sent Balazar from Ely to Jim Dutcher's project in Stanley, Idaho, for the Wolf Return of a Legend ABC documentary. And one thing about wolf people, I'd say probably we've been in the same room 4 times, Bruce and Pat and I, just because you know, I flew back to Ely. I'm not exactly, not a lot of mobility for traveling when you care for wolves. But one thing about wolf people is I think we're all have very similar, probably sense of humor, very similar, kind of just an overall understanding of probably one of the most complex wildlife species out there that, you know, a cougar can kill somebody and it's no big deal. And I think Bruce pointed out to me in a conversation, a bear kills somebody in Montana. It's the 5th page. You know, a wolf takes a sheep and it's front page news. You know, there is clearly something different about this individual, this species that makes it very emotional, very challenging. And I think the people who work with them are all kindred spirits in trying to help educate and help do justice to something that is clearly fear manipulation and targeted of elimination. As I think that's, to me, all the wolf people I've worked with, you know, it's just about finding justice for this animal that's factual, and that's, you know, they're not a god, they're not a demon, they just are, you know, they just exist, and that's all they should have to do is exist and be who they are, you know, and that's our role. So I appreciate Bruce, you know, you're willing to do this, and like I said, I haven't seen you in 30 some years, but it's like we're just, you know, visiting last week. So I think that's what wolf people are about. So thanks for watching. And we'll send you an archive out of this, and we'll add the game camera clips to that archive. And if you did not get a chance, Bruce's video that was produced, The Wolf Reeler Imagined, was shared with a link on YouTube. So if you want to take a look at that, and if you didn't get it, let us know, or if there was some issue with it, we'll be happy to send that out again. So take care. My best to Pat.
Thank you,
Yep,
Bruce.
she's off on a walk with Faye around Lake Como right now.
Oh, cool. All right. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.